Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a powerful, unbalanced style team that I used to reach legend rank on my wife's account in the Spring Cup. Now this team is built around a Lapras lead with a Walrein closer. These Pokemon share the same typing, Ice Water, but they play very differently. Lapras can handle Pokemon like Tentacruel that Walrein struggles against, and Walrein with the faster ice damage is a lot more convincing into the grass types that give Lapras trouble. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and I'm going to showcase the team that I climbed 170 points with in a day to reach legend on this account. We pick up a bad lead in the first match, leading into Cradily. So I'm going to throw one Psywave and then safe switch into Klefki. Klefki is basically used as a damage sponge on this team, as that's typically where it's going to be at its strongest. Just repositioning, forcing opponents to throw energy, like in this instance, the opponent's running a team that's triple weak to Klefki, so they're forced to debuff before sending in the Air/Tropius. We do play to the CMP tie, Leaf Blade is going to connect, and now I am going to overfarm slightly so I can CMP tie them a second time. A debuff foul play will not knock out, and I'm actually going for an undercharge here because I want farm on Walrein. So Leaf Blade is going to connect, they undercharge as well, aggressive pivot into the Walrein. I'm now up on energy, and it looks like whatever they had in the back, maybe a third grass type, they are going to resign the match. Lapras against Tentacruel, this is a very nice lead for the Lapras. Typically, Tentacruel leads will have Pokemon in the back that work out pretty nicely, oftentimes a grass type, which of course Walrein would love to see. In this instance, my opponent is going to bank some energy and then safe switch into a Shadow Feraligatr. Feraligatr is going to fire off some energy here on a CMP tie. I did try and throw one sooner, but unfortunately, the fast moves have been a bit inconsistent as of late. They are going to end up shielding that Sparkling Aria. They're very low on the Feraligatr, and I don't want to lose this energy, so I will commit the shield. This energy is not very useful into a Tentacruel, so I decided to pivot out into the Klefki. Now, this is actually pivoting from a point of weakness. My Walrein does not have an amazing matchup into Tentacruel, but they're staying in, which works out very nicely for me, and I'm confident in the fact that a Sparkling Aria or an Ice Beam will be better used against whatever they have in the back. Here, Klefki is going to win the CMP tie over Tentacruel. Tentacruel is going to get knocked out. In the back is going to be Jellicent. Jellicent is another Pokemon that this team is ABA weak to, but the biggest learning that I've had from playing a week of Spring Cup is that Jellicent is pretty fraudulent into Lapras, and especially if you can get a little bit of chip damage on it, then with the two Ice Water types, you can just overload the Jellicent. At this point, Jellicent realizes they are never beating both Walrein and Lapras, and they will concede the match. We move to the next match, leading Lapras into Empoleon, and this is actually a Steel Wing Empoleon. I'm quite surprised to see an Empoleon on Steel Wing. Steel Wing's pacing is very slow. Typically, on the Empoleons that I've seen, they have been on Metal Claw, but this one is on Steel Wing. Sparkling Aria is going to land, and the fun fact about Steel Wing Empoleon is that despite everything Lapras throws being resisted, it just loses to Lapras. Lapras is going to get a Psywave farm down goes Empoleon, and things are looking pretty good for us here. In comes Mantine. Here I should bank the Ice Beam and then pivot. I get a little greedy trying to bank double Sparkling Aria, but I realize I don't have enough HP. So I did let my Lapras get too low. They are going to go for a Water Pulse, and out comes Amoonguss. Looking at my health bar, I quickly realize I can get to double foul play, so I'm always going to go for the double foul play instead of one flash cannon. Here they no shield, but even so, double foul play is the correct move to go for, because if you flash cannon and they shield, you get absolutely no value out of that energy, whereas double foul play, even if they no shield the first, it means I don't have quite the upside of a flash cannon landing. I avoid the downside, which is getting no value from the energy whatsoever. Here, I'm just going to double shield the Walrein because I know Mantine, it's never doing enough damage to win this game onto the Walrein. Walrein has so much energy. Icicle Spear is going to connect, going for Icicle Spear number 2 as well. And the nice thing is I do have a move on Lapras, so I go for the combo play. There's the prediction from my opponent. Very nicely done from them. So they are able to deny that energy, but for me, this still works out. They will fire off energy, but they just can't get to 2 moves. I'm just going to undertap here. Opponent does end up catching onto Amoonguss. Even if I zero bubble it, I don't think they will survive. I was hoping to get one Powder Snow, but it's not going to matter. We still get to farm down the Mantine and take the win. Lapras into Cradily, we've seen this lead before. One Psywave and a safe switch into Klefki just to see what the opponent wants to do. And like last time, this opponent is choosing to stay in here and debuff, which works out great for me. I'm going to look to overfarm and then CMP tie them on the next. They try for a Flash Cannon catch onto Lantern. If you do see Lantern, Lantern's going to be a very difficult Pokemon to deal with. As Lantern, obviously I would much rather see it on the Klefki, but since I'm debuffed, I'm getting very little value out of this energy. I will still fire off Foul Play after Foul Play after Foul Play, but I'm really going to need Walrein to put in a shift in the endgame. Lantern over farming massively. I debated waiting a turn and going for a catch, but I figured catching a Surf wouldn't do a lot for me onto the Lapras instead. I just let the Klefki go and bring in the Lapras. Lapras will take the Thunderbolt, but I will exit with some energy, and this energy does mean I will get to threaten Cradily. Back in comes Cradily. Cradily does now have enough for a Rock Tomb. They are going to commit the shield. There's the switch to the Walrein, and Walrein will immediately be met with the Rock Tomb. I am going to be shielding up here as Rock Tomb comes through. I will get the outpace here. I'm debuffed. I'm really hoping this can knock out. Icicle Spear does not KO. They barely hang on, and that's bad news for me, as now I'm going to be double debuffed first, whatever they have in the back, and it's a Tropius, and being double debuffed, I think I'm going to lose this game. I don't really want to throw the energy because I'm double debuffed, but I'm realizing that I kind of have to, because unfortunately my Lapras doesn't have a move. If my Lapras had a move, then I would be potentially in an okay spot, but Lapras just can't get to a move. Maybe there was a win con with switching into the Lapras, but I still think the opponent could have just air slashed down with the Tropius very comfortably, left with a move, and I still would have just lost that game. We move to the next game, Lapras versus Lapras. Now this matchup is a very, very common lead. The good news is, at least in the ELO bracket that I was playing in, there was very few players on Skull Bash. I think I only encountered a few. So you can pretty safely get away with being on Sparkling Aria plus Ice Beam. So they are going to go for the Sparkling Aria as well. I always like to try and farm up to potentially bluff a Skull Bash just to see if I can potentially spook an opponent into a shield. But at the ELO range that I was playing at, people were pretty freely disrespecting Skull Bash and just assuming that people would not have it. This Lapras is going to be hit with a Sparkling Aria. Opponent is going to be firing off more energy here, and I am going to no shield. The Sparkling Aria does not KO, and I'm going to return fire with a Sparkling Aria of my own. This Sparkling Aria will not knock out either. They're going to switch into Weezing and go for an aggressive snipe. Oftentimes, I like to aggressively snipe with Walrein there. In this particular instance, I decided against it, and I honestly don't like the way that that played out. This one Fairy Wind advantage means that they're going to make a second Sludge when I make the Earthquake. Normally, I would outpace because they've already thrown, but they negate that by having that one Fairy Wind head start. So I think for future Lapras leads, I will potentially try and undercharge the final move, just so that way I can aggressively switch in Walrein, and Walrein can be set up nicely against their backline. Here, I'm going to try for a Sludge catch. I'm unsuccessful in that attempt, and now it's a tough call to make. I respect the overheat. It's a Sludge. But when they throw right away, this tells me they have not brought Overheat to the battle. Sludge is going to connect. There's a switch in the back. Is a Fire Fang Mawile. And today is a really good day to have Flash Cannon. Flash Cannon is going to hit for massive neutral damage onto the Mawile. Mawile barely clinging to life as it makes a last second Power Up Punch. Power Up Punch is going to get Klefki a little bit lower, but my switch timer is available. I'm spamming the switch button, in comes Walrein immediately to this Weezing, and I get to fire off this Icicle Spear. Icicle Spear KOs the Weezing, Lapras gets farmed down, and we're able to take the win. And I believe this is the 4-1 set that we were able to claim to make it to Legend rank, which is 30-37 ELO. Now for the remainder of the video, I'll be showcasing a few selected games, showcasing various different leads and how I like to play them out. First one, this is a huge problem, leading into Hisui Electrode. In this instance, as with most times when I'm ABA core broken, I'm just going to switch in Klefki. Here, I'm more than happy to no shield a Wild Charge, but they actually end up Swift baiting, which was a pretty big surprise. Now, I'm actually looking to preserve the Klefki. They Wild Charge and dip into Lapras. The fact that they've stayed in here, they have very much desynced the switch timers, and that is something that is to my advantage. Because when they fire off this Sparkling Aria, and when it barely does not KO, I can save the foul play and bring in my own Lapras. and this puts my opponent in an incredibly tough position, because Hisuian Electrode only beats Lapras because it's able to spam on Wild Charges before Lapras can get 2 super effective Ice Beams. But I'm exiting with 100 energy, which means they are not going to have a fun time dealing with this Lapras. There's going to be a switch into their final Pokemon, which is Jellicent. They're unable to send in the Electrode because Electrode would get crushed by Ice Beams, so they send in Jellicent. But this matchup right here is why I say Jellicent is pretty fraudulent into Lapras. The Psywave plus Sparkling Aria pressure is just absolutely unreal. Jellicent forced to shield, they can't even Hex down. They're forced to fire off some energy, and Lapras is very okay with that. In comes the Walrein. I tried for the CMP sack swap, but that's amazing patience from my opponent. The CMP sack swap would have ended the game on the spot, but it's not to be. In comes Electrode, but I'm just never letting Electrode get to a move. I get to fire off this Icicle Spear, down goes the Electrode, and they're going to send back in Jellicent. Jellicent will fire off a move. I'm going to use my final shield here on the Shadow Ball, and now Walrein is going to get to pick up the knockout with Icicle Spear. This is resisted, but the Jellicent is so low. So we saw a lot of core breakers in this game, but it did not matter, as for the second game in a row, Walrein takes the win by farming down a Lapras. Great lead in the next match leading into Galarian Weezing. Most Galarian Weezing leads will typically go for a Sludge and then a switch into their own Lapras. Now you have to be very quick on the counter switch here into Klefki, as if you give them more than a 2 Psywave head start, they will get to a second Sparkling Aria before Klefki gets to a Flash Cannon, and that is a very big problem. You always want to guarantee that you can get to the Flash Cannon and then your choice whether you bait or nuke, but you need to apply that first shielding decision to them before they can apply it to you. They end up over farming, so I'm happy to settle for a foul play. I'm just looking to get damage on this Pokemon because now my opponent is in a range where I should be able to just about knock it out with a Sparkling Aria. Sparkling Aria is going to knock out me. I'm going to send in the Walrein, bank some energy, and there's a snipe back into my own Lapras. They were going to throw right before I made the move on the Walrein, so I just don't give them that opportunity. They bring back in Weezing, and this is a pretty big surprise to me, because Weezing, I mean, I'm not quite in Sludge range yet, but the fact that they're sending this matchup in does a little bit worry me that I need to preserve the Lapras. It ends up being a Jellicent in the back, and believe it or not, despite the fact that I'm fully walled here, I'm happy that I preserved the Lapras, because again, the Psywave plus Sparkling Aria pressure onto Jellicent really adds up over time. Jellicent forced to fire off some energy here. They can never farm down. Shadow Ball picks up the KO, and now it's completely the Walrein show. Walrein is farming up. I am going to be shielding here, as a Surf Bait does feel a little bit unlikely, and now this Walrein is just absolutely overflowing with energy, getting to unleash Icicle Spear. That's going to knock out the Jellicent. In comes the Weezing. And I need to get to 2 Icicle Spears. Icicle Spear number 1 is going to be shielded, making it to Icicle Spear number 2, and that's going to be a losing CMP tie. Their Weezing goes for the Sludge, but it's not enough damage. Walrein survives, and now gets to pick up the KO with the Icicle Spear and take the win. Hopping into the next match, and we're going to see a pretty familiar lead, Lapras into Lapras, but I did want to include this battle to showcase how to play this lead matchup so much better. I feel like the first one was a pretty poor example of how to play out this lead. So to start with, it's going to look very similar, farming up to bluff a potential Skull Bash, even though at the elo range that I'm at, people just aren't really running it that much because having coverage into the grasses is just so much better overall. Here, my opponent is going to go for another Sparkling Aria, and I'm very comfortable with a no shield. Sparkling Aria connects. I'm going to return fire with a Sparkling Aria of my own. And this matchup is very Ivy dependent depending on the Laprases that you and your opponent are running. Here, I do decide to go for a full charge because I saw it would not be enough to knock out. And now, I'm going to aggressively pivot into the Walrein if I survive this because I want farm on the Walrein. Walrein energy goes everywhere in this meta. Opponent sends out a Ferrothorn, and this is a pretty nice spot to be in. I'm up energy as the Walrein. I am switch locked, which does make this a little bit uncomfortable, but I will be able to output some nice pressure onto my opponent. So I am going to be firing off the Icicle Spear. My opponent actually shields there. I was a bit surprised in the moment to see that shield because that move does not knock out. They can survive the Icicle Spear, but if they're shielding, that means then there's something in the back that probably doesn't want to see Walrein. I'm going to be double shielding Power Whips, and this is going to be interesting because my opponent can outpace. They are 1 away. I would love to try and go for the catch here, so I will go for the catch onto the Lapras, but great patience from my opponent, and their final Pokemon is revealed to be Mantine. I should have a winning position here, and I'm actually going to send in the Walrein right away, because Walrein, I'm going to get some nice damage. But I'm very okay with the Walrein getting KO'd, because I don't need Walrein to win this game. I'm winning the game on the back of Klefki. My opponent does have a Power Whip banked on that Ferrothorn, but Power Whip is not a particularly threatening move to Klefki. I only have to worry about them getting to a Flash Cannon. So they go for the Water Pulse, and now they switch into the Ferrothorn, and I throw the Foul Play. I should have done one more Astonish to CMP tied to a Flash Cannon. Thankfully, the Foul Play still KOs, and they are going to resign the match, but that wasn't the cleanest endgame ever by me. Hopping to the final match, Lapras into Tentacruel. Now this is a pretty nice lead matchup. Very okay playing this out as the Lapras, and my opponent is on Acid Spray. So that's very okay. I'm never going to be shielding the Acid Spray. I'm just going to look to farm up a ton of energy, and now look to unleash mayhem with a Sparkling Aria. Sparkling Aria is going to connect. There's a switch out, and here I make a misplay. I saw the typing, I assumed it was Lapras, so I very quickly switched in the Klefki, but this is actually going to be a Dugong. Had I seen it was a Dugong, I would have sent in the Walrein. Here, I decided to full send, and the moment I clicked full send, I realized I shouldn't have done that. Dugongs love to shield. It's their favorite pastime. They love shielding and debuffing, so I definitely should have gone for a Fate there, as I got very little value out of that energy. Now, I'm going to send in the Walrein, and I'm very comfortable no shielding here. Earthquake will knock out unless the Icy Wind, and they do decide to Icy Wind. I bank a bunch of energy on that Walrein, and now I'm going to switch back into the Lapras. I know that a Sparkling Aria will not knock out, but it puts it in a range that I can potentially farm it down with the Lapras later on. They are going to fire off energy. There is a Drill Run, and now they're going to pivot out into Gastrodon. I'm only making one move, and Ice Beam does do slightly more damage, so I will go for the Ice Beam, and that's a smart shield from my opponent. Now, I need Walrein to clutch. A 1v3. This is going to be a very tricky endgame. Gastrodon is highly likely to just go straight Body Slam. I do have to respect the potential full send, but when they throw here, this can only be a Body Slam. I think that I need to preserve shields, so I will let the Body Slam go. There's a switch to Tentacruel. I'm unfortunately forced to go for an Earthquake, as an Icicle Spear would not knock out. Earthquake is going to KO the Tentacruel, but I have such little health remaining on the Walrein. Are they going to be sending in the Gastrodon? Yes, Gastrodon hits the field, and I know that the second Mud Slap did register there. I'm on very low health. In comes the Dugong. Dugong's fast move is double resisted, and Walrein barely clinging to life. One final Icicle Spear knocking out the Dugong, and that's a good game. All in all, I had a ton of fun with this team. This team is a slight variation of a team created by Final Boss AJ. Final Boss AJ initially ran the team with Shadow Astonish Mawile, but on my wife's account, she doesn't have Shadow Mawile, so Klefki did prove to be a pretty nice substitute. I think that as these metas end up evolving from week 1 to week 2, there's a tendency for people to devolve more into alignment dependent Pokemon like Gastrodon that don't have flexibility, like Gastrodon, Firefang, Mawiles of the world, etc. But that's what I did like about the ABA Ice Water strategy, is the Ice Waters really feel like they had neutral play in a lot of those matchups against people who are really trying to just play for alignment. Even if they managed to get rid of the Lapras, the Walrein still offering fairly similar coverage, being able to spam out those ice type attacks really proved to be beneficial for this climb. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.